Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Walter, and I want to talk about something most people don't think about until it's too late. How outside influence can quietly destroy a marriage. Not money problems. Not infidelity. Just the constant, slow drip of other people's opinions seeping into your relationship until one day, you look at your partner and realize you're not in control of your own marriage anymore. And if you're not careful, by the time you wake up to it, the damage is already done. I learned this lesson the hard way. When I got married, I thought it was just going to be me and my wife, Madison, building a life together. I thought the only battles we'd fight would be against life's challenges, not against people who were supposed to support us. But what I didn't see coming was just how much control my in-laws would have over my marriage. And the worst part? I didn't even realize how deep their influence ran until it was too late. I used to believe that love and understanding were enough to keep a marriage strong. That as long as my wife and I were committed to each other, we'd be able to handle anything. But what I didn't account for was the power of constant outside interference. How when someone whispers in your partner's ear long enough, they start to see you through someone else's eyes instead of their own. And once that happens, it doesn't matter how much love you have, because the foundation of trust and teamwork is already cracked. This isn't just a story about a troubled marriage. This is about how a family that wasn't mine took control of my life, made my wife question me at every turn, and ultimately made me realize that sometimes walking away is the only way to keep your sanity. So, if you've ever felt like you were fighting for your marriage not just with your spouse, but with their entire family, then stick around, because this story is for you. When I think back to how I met Madison, it feels like a different lifetime. I was fresh out of college, dragging behind me a pile of student loans and absolutely no solid plan for my future. I had a degree, sure, but that didn't come with a roadmap. I was just another young guy trying to figure things out, hoping to land on my feet somehow. The world felt bigger than I was prepared for. And money? Well, that was more of an idea than a reality. I met Madison at a party thrown by a mutual friend. It was a normal gathering, filled with laughter, music, and a bunch of people either celebrating their early careers or drowning in post-college uncertainty, like me. I remember standing by the drink table when Madison walked up, confidently reaching for the same bottle of soda I was about to grab. We laughed, made some small talk, and before I knew it, we were in our own little world, talking like we'd known each other forever. We didn't start dating right away. It took a few months of casual meetups, long conversations, and realizing how easy it was to be around her before we made it official. I was drawn to her warmth. At the time, I was working my first real job, something professional, but barely paying enough to cover rent and my loan payments. It wasn't glamorous, but I figured it was a stepping stone. Madison never made me feel small for where I was in life. She believed in my potential, and that meant everything. Our relationship had a rhythm to it that just worked. We had fun together, we could talk about anything, and most importantly, we respected each other. It wasn't like we never fought, of course we did. But our arguments never turned into wars. We had this unspoken rule that we wouldn't let things spiral, that no matter what, we'd figure it out. And for a while, that's exactly what we did. Madison and I had been dating for a year. I was finally starting to see a small breakthrough in my career. A promotion was on the horizon. It wasn't a huge leap, but it was enough to make me feel confident about taking the next step. So I proposed. She said yes, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. The excitement, the future we were planning together, it all felt like it was falling into place. Then came the part one wasn't prepared for, meeting her family. When people say that when you marry someone, you're not just marrying them, you're marrying their family too. I used to think that was just an overused phrase, but let me tell you, I know for a fact that it's true. The first time I visited her parents' home, I could immediately tell who was in charge. Her mom. She wasn't just the head of the house. She was the decision maker, the judge, and the enforcer all rolled into one. Her dad was there, sure, but he barely spoke. He just nodded along as if his opinions had already been decided for him. Her mother, on the other hand, wasted no time getting straight to the point. She didn't care about pleasantries and didn't bother pretending to be warm or welcoming. She looked at me the way a landlord looks at a tenant who's a month behind on rent. "So what do you do?" she asked, her eyes scanning me like she was running numbers in her head. I explained that I had a professional job and that I was working hard and climbing the ladder. I even mentioned that I had a promotion coming soon. But she didn't look impressed. Her next question? "Do you have any debt?" I told her the truth. I had student loans, but I was actively working on paying them off. She barely let me finish before shaking her head like I had already failed some kind of silent test. I could feel the weight of her disappointment before she even spoke. She muttered, looking over at Madison like she was reconsidering all of her daughter's life choices. "Madison, did you know about this?" That reaction caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting applause, but I also wasn't expecting to be treated like I had just confessed to a crime. Student debt wasn't exactly rare, and it wasn't like I was drowning in it. I had a plan. I tried to explain that. I told her I was focused on my career and that I was building towards something better. But the more I talked, the more I could see it didn't matter. She didn't like that I wasn't already where she thought I should be. In her eyes, I wasn't husband material because I wasn't financially perfect right now. It didn't matter that I was driven or that I had a plan. All she saw was a man with debt and a salary that wasn't high enough for her standards. The conversation dragged on, but I already knew how this was going to go. No matter what I said, her opinion of me was locked in from that first meeting. And to her, I wasn't good enough for her daughter. That night, when I left their house, I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't marrying her. I was marrying Madison. If Madison was happy, if we were on the same page, then I could deal with her mother's attitude. I didn't realize that this wasn't just a bad first impression. It was the start of something much bigger, something that would stretch on for years. That first impression never left her mind, and it never would. And that was a problem I didn't fully understand yet. But I would soon. I worked hard, I pushed through, and after years of grinding, I built a life that was more than just comfortable. My debts were gone, and my bank account was solid. But here's the part that still baffles me. None of that changed the way my in-laws treated me. No matter how much I grew, how much I accomplished, or how well I provided for her daughter, they still looked at me the same way they did on the first day we met. I ignored it for years because I loved Madison. Madison's mother had a way of controlling things without being obvious about it. She didn't just run her household. She wanted to run mine too. She had opinions on everything, from how we should manage our money to how I should handle my career. At first, it was little comments here and there, disguised as advice. But over time, it became clear that she wasn't just offering suggestions. She expected her words to be carried out. And the worst part? Madison listened. I started to notice that whenever we had a disagreement, Madison would go to her mother first instead of talking it out with me. If we argued about finances, she'd call her mom. If we had a small issue about household responsibilities, her mom was the first person she'd text. And every time she came back from one of those conversations, she acted like she had been given new instructions, like she had a new angle on why I was wrong. It felt like I wasn't just dealing with my wife's opinions. I was battling a second voice in our marriage, one that had way too much influence. At first, I let things slide. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Every family has its dynamics, and maybe this was just how they were. But as the years went on, it became impossible to ignore. No matter how much I tried to make decisions as the man of my house, it felt like I was being overridden by someone who didn't even live under my roof. The breaking point for me was when I finally reached a place of stability. After years of struggling, I was now in control of my finances, bringing in solid money and providing a good life. I thought that would be the moment when things would shift, that now, with no financial struggles, I'd finally get the respect I had been waiting for. But instead of things getting better, they got worse. The more stable I became, the more Madison's mother felt the need to insert herself into our marriage. The more confident I became in making my own decisions, the more she tried to challenge them through my wife. It was like she couldn't accept that I didn't need her approval anymore. So instead of stepping back, she doubled down. And Madison? She didn't see it the way I did. To her, her mother was just giving her advice, just looking out for her best interests. She didn't realize that every piece of advice was a wedge being driven deeper into our marriage. She didn't see that every time she let her mother's opinions override mine, she was making it clear whose voice mattered more to her. That was the part that hurt the most. I could handle a difficult mother-in-law. I could deal with her disapproval. But what I couldn't ignore was the fact that, in my own marriage, I wasn't the one my wife trusted the most. And the more I realized that, the harder it became to pretend everything was fine. One night, I found myself in an argument with my wife. Madison was frustrated that I hadn't fixed the sink like I said I would. I had been swamped with work all week, but in her eyes, that didn't matter. "It's been leaking for days, Walter," she said, arms crossed, voice sharp. "If you don't care, just say that." I sighed. "Madison, I told you I'd handle it this weekend. I've been drowning at work, and honestly, a leaky sink isn't the end of the world." That should have been the end of it. A minor disagreement, nothing we hadn't handled before. But instead of responding to me, she dropped her hands to her hips and said, "You know, my mom was right about you." I paused. I had heard that line before, and it never ended well. I tried to keep my cool. "Right about what?" "She says you never take my feelings seriously," Madison replied, shaking her head. And maybe she's right. Maybe I deserve better. Everything inside me went still. It wasn't about the sink anymore. This was her mother's view creeping into our marriage again. That's when I lost it. "You know what? Your parents have been poisoning our marriage from the start." The words came out fast, but I meant every single one of them. I'm not married to just you. I'm married to them, too, apparently. Every time we have an issue, you run straight to them instead of working it out with me. They're the real reason we're having problems. Madison's expression turned ice cold. I had spent years holding back, trying not to create tension. But what did that get me? A wife who saw me as the enemy while her parents played the role of her saviors. For a split second, I thought maybe she would hear me see what I was saying and realize how much it hurt me. But instead, I watched as she shut down. She wasn't about to admit that her parents had overstepped. And that's when I knew this wasn't a marriage anymore. This was a battle I was never going to win. That night, Madison didn't stop fuming, pacing back and forth around the house. I had seen her upset before, but this was different. "I can't believe you just said that," she snapped, shaking her head. "My parents have done nothing but try to help us, and you have the nerve to accuse them of poisoning our marriage?" I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice steady. "Madison, they're not helping us. They're controlling us. Every decision we make, every argument we have, you bring them into it. It's like I'm not just married to you. I'm married to them too." She pointed a finger at me. "They give me advice because they care about me. Unlike you, they actually listen when I tell them how I feel." I faced her. "Are you even hearing yourself? They listen to you, but what about me? Do I even have a voice in this marriage? Or do I have to go through your mom every time I want to have a conversation with my own wife?" Her face turned red. "You're twisting this. You just don't like my mom because she sees right through you. She knows how selfish you are. Maybe she's right. Maybe I do deserve better." That was it. I threw my hands up. "Madison, you win." The silence that followed was deafening. Madison looked at me like I had just told her the worst thing in the world. Then, without another word, she grabbed her phone and stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I already knew what was about to happen next. She was going to call her parents, tell them everything I said. And when she came back out, this wouldn't just be an argument between us anymore. It would be a full-blown war. I sat back down, waiting for the inevitable. Sure enough, minutes later, I heard her voice through the thin walls. "Mom, you won't believe what he just said about you." And just like that, I became the villain of a story. I just didn't know how bad things were about to get. In the days that followed, I started noticing the shift in the way Madison acted toward me. I opened my phone the next day after the argument and saw that I had been removed from the family group chat. To be honest, I had wanted out of that chat for a long time. It was mostly filled with updates I didn't care about and pointless conversations that I was barely acknowledged in. Not long after, I realized I wasn't getting invited to family gatherings anymore. Birthdays, barbecues, dinners. It wasn't like I had been dying to go to those events, but the message was clear. I wasn't welcome. At home, things gradually got better. When it was just the two of us, we still talked. But then she'd go visit her parents, and when she came back, it was like she had spent hours in some kind of brainwashing chamber. Her energy was different. And then the accusations would start. She'd say I didn't appreciate her enough, that I dismissed her feelings, that I didn't care about her happiness. These weren't her words. I knew how my wife thought, how she argued, how she expressed herself. This was her mother talking. I started wondering what they were feeding her over there. The worst part was that she believed them. Realizing how bad things had gotten, I tried to have a conversation with my wife. I had been holding back my frustration for weeks, trying to find the right moment to talk things out, but there was never a right moment. Every time I brought up the tension between us, she'd brush it off or change the subject. But tonight, I wasn't letting it go. I called her into the bedroom and told her exactly what was on my mind. We need to talk, Madison. This marriage isn't supposed to feel like a war. I don't want to keep fighting like this. I searched her face for any sign that she cared, that she was willing to meet me halfway. Walter, I already know where this is going, she said. You insulted my family, Walter. You need to apologize if you want things to go back to normal. I almost laughed out loud. That was it? That was her solution? Not fixing our communication, not setting boundaries with her parents, just me apologizing? I leaned back in my chair, exhaling. Madison, this isn't even you talking. This is your mom. She put this in your head, didn't she? Her expression turned cold. I don't need anyone to tell me when I've been disrespected. I shook my head. So, you don't see anything wrong with how they treat me? With how they've interfered in every major decision in our marriage? The only problem here is me not apologizing. She didn't flinch. That's right. It was clear she wasn't on my side anymore. Maybe she never really was. I looked at her one last time, searching for anything that would tell me the woman I married was still in there. But all I saw was someone who had made up her mind. She had chosen her side. And it wasn't mine. That weekend, as Madison packed her things to visit her parents, I already knew what I had to do. I had been thinking about it since I came to terms that I was tired of going back and forth with my wife over her parents. I knew I was fighting a losing battle, and no matter how much I tried to reclaim my place as her husband, I would always be outnumbered. I was tired of defending myself, tired of explaining why I should have a say in my own home, tired of fighting for respect that should have been freely given. So, the moment she walked out that door to go see them, I took my chance. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed the suitcase and started packing. I wasn't emotional about it. I just packed clothes, documents, and a few personal things that actually mattered to me. Everything else? I left it behind. I wasn't just leaving the house. I was leaving the version of myself that tolerated disrespect, begged to be heard, and fought for a place in my own marriage. Once my bags were packed, I sat down at my laptop and booked the first one-way flight out of the country. The destination? I didn't even think too hard about it. The Bahamas. Somewhere far and peaceful. I didn't leave a note. I just closed the door behind me and walked away from a life I had spent years trying to hold together. The next day, Madison came home to an emptier house than she left it. I can only imagine what went through her mind when she saw my things gone. Whatever went through her head at that moment, it must have hit her hard, because the next thing I knew, my phone was blowing up with her calls. I just stared at the screen as it rang over and over. I wasn't sure what she wanted. Was she suddenly realizing she didn't want to lose me? Or was she panicking because she couldn't access the joint account? That's right, I had emptied it before I left. And why wouldn't I? I was the only one putting money into it. I wasn't about to leave behind the money I worked for. I didn't pick up. I didn't text back. I just sat there, watching as the missed calls piled up. But after a few days of me not responding, the tone shifted. The messages weren't filled with accusations anymore. They were filled with panic. She started asking when I was coming back. She kept saying there was nothing for me out there. And then came the part one expected. She admitted she was struggling. She said she had been relying on whatever little her parents could give her these past days, and it wasn't enough. I knew that was coming. See, I had been the one keeping our household financially stable. The joint account? That was my money. The bills? Mostly on me. When I left and took my money with me, she had to face a reality she never had to deal with before. Then she sent a voice note. When I played it, she was crying, saying I abandoned her with nothing after she stood by me when I had nothing. She made sure to highlight how she had been there for me during the early years when I was struggling. But she conveniently left out the part where she let her mother destroy our marriage piece by piece. She didn't mention how every fight turned into a three-way argument where I was outnumbered. She didn't mention how she sided with them over me, how she let them treat me like I was an outsider in my own home. I felt the pain in her voice, but I didn't reply. I didn't trust that she was really seeing things clearly. People don't change in a week. People don't unlearn years of manipulation overnight. She wasn't reaching out because she understood what she did wrong. She was reaching out because she was struggling without me. And that wasn't my problem anymore. Then, of course, her parents got involved. I blocked them before they could even get their words in. I knew exactly what they would say, but I didn't care. By that point, I was already in the Bahamas. The more time that passed, the more I realized I didn't miss anything back home. I didn't miss the arguments and the stress. The only thing I abandoned was my work, and I already had plans to figure out my part by doing something online. Just a few days away, and it was like a weight had been lifted off my chest. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no waiting for the next argument. For the first time in a long time, I could actually think. I had finally removed myself from a situation that had been slowly killing me. Looking back, it was so clear how toxic it all was. My in-laws had never accepted me, no matter how much I grew, no matter how much I provided. In their eyes, I was never going to be good enough. And the truth is, I could have lived with that if it stayed between me and them. But it didn't. My wife, who was supposed to have my back, let them dictate how our marriage worked. Every decision I made had to pass through them like some kind of approval board. If I didn't fall in line, I was wrong. If I stood up for myself, I was attacking them. There was no winning, just a slow erosion of who I was. And when I finally snapped and drew the line, they didn't hesitate to push me out completely. Madison made her choice. In her mind, she was just trying to keep the peace, but that's the problem. There was never any peace to keep. It was just control, disguised as family concern. The moment I challenged that control, I became the villain. And I played the part perfectly. I walked away from a fight I knew I could never win. And now, weeks have passed, and I don't miss anything. I don't even miss Madison the way I thought I would. She had been reshaped, little by people who never saw me as part of their family to begin with. So, to anyone watching this who feels like they're living in a marriage with too many voices, who feels like they're constantly being pushed into the background while their in-laws call the shots, think hard about what you're actually fighting for. A marriage should be two people, not a committee. And if your partner isn't willing to stand by your side, then you need to ask yourself if you're really in a partnership at all. At the end of the day, leaving wasn't the plan, but it was the only choice I had left. And if this story resonates with you, if you know someone going through something similar, share this with them. They probably need to hear it. It'll help them see what took me too long to figure out. And if you made it this far, don't forget to like the video. It helps more than you think. Thanks for listening.